they said, we've taken a look at what's going on, and they don't stop and take a deep breath. They're going to cut the last tree in a life. And that caught me up. What do you mean?
It's easy when the supply is endless, and it's hard when the supply reaches its end, and we're at the end of the supply.
Even though it's called Tongass National Forest, to us, it's our homeland.
I will never sleep until I've exercised every possible way to protect this forest.
You know, you could do a whole separate documentary on how the United States treated Native Americans.
You have the issues of Tlingit and Haida peoples who have been here for thousands of years. Take it to it.
You can't uncut those trees. You can always come back and cut them, but you can't uncut them.
We are not going to be responsible for the disappearance of music from this earth.
So yeah, I sort of wanted to do this case study, and I wanted to try and do as much as possible, make it practical information that other people could use, because there are aspects to the filmmaking process, and especially making this film, that are, I mean, every film is going to be completely different from every other film. I'm sure those of you who've made anything has found that. So I'm going to try and stick to things that I'm hoping are helpful, and that was kind of a difficult yardstick to use to measure, you know, what we should talk about. So I was thinking, okay, we can kind of break filmmaking into these 4 parts: funding, production, edit, post, outreach, and distribution. There's actually like a 5th, which is the sort of, I don't know, more ongoing, whatever, you know, after you sort of finish the main thrust of filmmaking. But I think I'm going to focus mostly on funding and the edit post, because I think production, of all the things that are individual, production is probably the most individual. And outreach distribution, I know there's like another class that's all about distribution later, so I kind of thought I would ease off on that one too. That also, it could be like 5 hours on that. So, number 1, funding. Musicwood came about because my wife Maxine is British. She's a director. She directed the film, we both produced it, and then I edited it. And when she was in the US waiting for her green card, she was doing some volunteer work for Greenpeace, and she was making a short film for them about overfishing in Alaska. And she heard about a campaign that Greenpeace was also running, the Musicwood campaign that was going on the land about the forest that was trying to save these giant old growth spruce that guitar makers use for their soundboards. And she sort of heard about it vaguely and came home to me one day and said, "Did you know the acoustic guitar is going to run out of wood in like 5 years?" Which I was like, "What? What are you talking about? How come I've never heard this story?" And there were some fundamentals in that statement that she sort of got wrong, but we were really hooked from that and started to look more into it and get more of the story and find out more about it. And the more we found out about it, the more we were interested. The Native American aspect was just unbelievable, and we'd been wanting to do a film ourselves. Anyway, this story came along, it just grabbed us, and we kept thinking, man, it's like, it's breaking itself down into acts. It's like Act 1, you hear about the guitar. Act 2, you find out it's like Native Americans. It's, you know, it was telling itself. So we would be telling the story to people at parties, whatever. We'd say, did you know the guitar makers are going to this rare forest, Native American one, and everybody was completely hooked. So we thought, wow, this is really something. She told fellow Scott Paul, who you saw in the trailer, who is the Greenpeace guy. She told him that we thought this was a great story. We'd love to make a film about it. He, of course, in the middle of running this campaign, was like, please, yes, make a film. At that time, also, the campaign was super positive. Everybody really thought this thing is going to work. The campaign was basically designed by Greenpeace to get high-end guitar manufacturers to come talk to the Native Americans who are logging these trees that are critical for the acoustic guitar. It's so complicated, it's even complicated to explain. And by instead of Greenpeace going to the natives and saying, you know, you should stop logging just because it's a good thing to do, it would be the guitar manufacturers going to say, you should change the way you're logging, because if you keep going at this rate, we won't be able to buy this wood from you anymore. And they spend a lot on the wood that they're buying. And they don't buy many logs. They're only buying like 100 logs a year, if that. So he said, fantastic, you know, if you guys want to make a film, we would love it. There came a critical point in the spring of 2008 where there's a big guitar trade show called the NAMM show, where all music manufacturers go. There's one in Nashville, there's one in Los Angeles. There's going to be one in Nashville, and Scott said to us, look, if you're really serious about making this film, you come down to Nashville, if you can pay for your own, you know, accommodation, flight, whatever, I can get you with all the key players. I can get you interviews with all the guitar guys, I can get you an interview with the Native Americans, you know, if you're really serious about doing this, we can do this. And this was a critical point for us, because now it's like, wow, we're standing on, actually, this is going to become a reality. Again, if you have your own project, you know about this is a crazy moment. And so the question becomes, well, how are we going to afford this? This is the budget, the estimated budget that we made for. It was so great going through all this old stuff. It was like I was cracking myself up. This is the estimated budget for that Nashville shoot. You can see it comes to $3,000, which is not that much, and it's so charming in like how few, this is what I find charming, how few line items there are, things like that. Our cameraman, the flight for Kurt, he spells his name with a C. We didn't even know how his name was spelled. I mean, he would go on to shoot the whole thing. He offered to donate his time, so we only had to pay for his flight, and he volunteered to do sound as well. But of course we had to get lights and have hotel rooms. There was parking, hard drive. Anyway, $3,000. That 2008 was the year of the economic stimulus George Bush gave everybody. So Maxine and I each had $600, so we were able to put $1,200 towards it. So it began to seem like it was something that was doable. And when we made that estimated budget, saw that it was doable, we decided to do it. And that's how we got started making the film. So we funded that part with our own money, which is one way of funding a film. It is not the way people want to fund a film. It is not the way anybody wants to fund a film, because films are very expensive. So, be that as may, it's valid, and beyond that, I mean, you're probably going to end up using some of your own money, one way or another. I mean, we certainly did. We'll get more into that later. The other way to fund it is with other people's money. This one is much better, much better. So we decided to, after spending that money ourselves, realizing it was probably, there were going to be a lot more shoots like this, we were probably going to have to go to Alaska, among other things. We needed to raise some money, so we wanted to get other people's money. So, 4 ways that we thought in those early days, here are the ways we were going to get other people's money. This is going to be easy. That's what I thought anyway. Channels. You know, we can go to channels and get them to pay for this film. Individuals, we can, I'd always heard, I don't know if you guys heard this too, like ask your dentist or, yes, yeah, it's weird, right? And it was like, oh yeah, they've got all this disposable income and somehow dentists love to make films. Grants and fundraisers. So Channels. Maxine and I both worked in TV. We actually met in TV. We did promos and short form pieces for a ton of different channels. TLC, BBC America, Sundance Channel, National Geographic. I had also edited a bunch of shows, programs for National Geographic. Some episodes of Dogtown, some episodes of National Geographic Explorer. And we had a lot of contacts. Maxine, one of her good friends from BBC America, went on to become the GM of Sundance Channel. So we were like, wow, we really know people that we can pitch this to, and this is going to be awesome. So we started to put together pitch materials. This is actually the first thing we wrote. I don't know if you can see this. The film follows a merry band of music makers. Again, it's charming in its naivete. I can't believe that I don't know where that came from. I can't believe we wrote that. And then this is nice too at the bottom. We thank you already for showing your support. I mean, I know you're definitely supposed to put things in the frame where they can imagine it doing it, but that's, I don't know, it seems like a little much. Anyway, we put together a ton of pitch documents. And I guess one of the things in the bigger picture, one of the things I never realized about making a film was how much we were going to write about the film. How long it was going to take to figure out how to explain the story, how the language would become refined for this and that, and applying for all of these different things. So the idea of knowing before you go in that there's going to be a ton of explaining how your story is going to become a film, or what it's going to look like. Would have been depressed for longer? I don't know. The bottom line is we raised $0 from channels. We did a lot of pitching. We put a lot of time and effort into this. But boy, channels, I mean, that was 2008, 2009, 2010, and I don't know, if you're a first-time filmmaker, number one, that's a really, really hard sell because nobody knows if you're going to deliver or what it's going to be like. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And most channels aren't buying one-off documentaries. That's something to keep in mind. And also ours was controversial because of the Native American aspect. We sort of thought we would be a real lock for PBS because PBS has such a Native American mandate. But the fact that, and nobody said this out loud, but the fact that our story was controversial in our film, the Native Americans are the ones doing the logging. The Native Americans were forced by Congress to become a corporation. And a corporation needs to make money, and the only way they can make money was through this resource. I mean, it's a very complex political story, something that requires a lot of balance that we had to find within the film. The bottom line is PBS said no. We think it was because it was too controversial. So, channel 0. Individuals. While I did ask my optician to he did not go for it. One of the things that we did do, though, and this I wanted to bounce. It was interesting. There was a lab that Graham did about this film, American Meat, where he talked about going to screenings and how going to every screening because you never know who will be there. These individuals that you can run into who will connect with what you're doing that can totally alter the shape or the direction that your film is going in. And we had a story like that with a friend of a friend that we knew who owned an audio house and a graphics house, and we went and pitched to him to invest. And again, we put this big presentation together, and he sort of said right off the bat, look, I can't give you guys any money. But it turned out his daughter was in a forestry program in Oregon, and he had a real deep affinity for both forests and for music. He started this audio house because he was really into music, and our film's so much about music. We always knew we were going to have musicians in the film as well, to let the guitar tell its, so the guitar could have its voice. There are a lot of voices in the film. So this guy, whose name was Jack, said, I can't give you any cash outright, but I can donate all the audio time you're going to need. I can donate all the graphics you're going to need, which is immeasurable. Again, if you're in the business at all, you know that stuff is so expensive, and it's stuff that's going to have to be done for your film. So it was kind of amazing to get that donation, and beyond that, he became sort of a major advisor.
And the specifics of that, when you say the audio, like for the music for the film itself, or?
Yeah, the music for the film itself, the score, the mix, a feature film mix is a huge undertaking, and the sound design, which is all of the effects and everything like that. website. So I mean, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for a feature, especially one that's so concerned with music, I guess. The bottom, he became sort of almost an executive producer on the film, which is kind of amazing. So individuals, he also advised us to start a nonprofit so that any donations from individuals would be tax deductible, which we did, which was kind of amazing. It was a lot of work, but it's very worth it. We now have this nonprofit. We have a commercial production company called Hitman Productions. We now have a nonprofit called Helpman Productions that's designed to make socially conscious documentaries, and that has been so helpful throughout every step of the way. I mean, and even now, when people are coming to us after seeing Musicwood and wanting us to make films for them or with them, we now have this structure in place where they can give us money, and it will all be tax deductible, and we can use that to fund the film. Once we made the nonprofit, Jack and his partner Lee each gave us $1,000 as kind of a, I don't know, a pat on the back or a, well done kind of thing. So from individuals, we did make $2,000, which is great, and audio, graphics, and score. Grants. I know there was a whole other class on grants. I don't know if you guys were in that one, but grants are very difficult, time-consuming, energy-consuming endeavors. We went to the, I can't remember what it's called, Foundation Center or something. Maybe she talked about it. In Manhattan, where you can go and sit at their weird computer system and figure out all the grants that are available, and you can type in keywords. So we put in Alaska and environment and New York and film, and we ended up applying to a ton of grants. A lot of them I'm sure will look familiar to you if you made a film or are making a film. Wilberforce, I think that was an Alaska one. Sundance, Tribeca, Pledging, Jerome, MacArthur. And then Martin Guitars and Gibson also have their own foundations that do good works. And so we thought that would be a lock, but as it turns out, it absolutely wasn't. Maybe a conflict of interest, I'm not sure. I can also give you guys any of these slides if you're interested. But we didn't get very far with any of these grants except Fledgling Fund and Chicken and Egg. We made it through a number of rounds. Chicken and Egg, we made it through almost like 3 rounds. We had kind of a weird bonus thing where someone who worked there, her father was in Squeeze. I don't know if you know that band from the 80s. And he's like super into music and guitars, so she was like, oh, I've got to show my dad this. And like, so he was like, wow, this is interesting. So we made it through, I don't know, 2 or 3 levels, whatever it was. We made it to the point at which we had put on the application that we have a rough cut available if you want to see it, which was a lie. Don't lie on your application because inevitably what's going to happen is you're going to make it through 3 rounds, then they're going to say, this is great, please show us your rough cut. And then you're going to have to say, okay, we'd be happy to get it to you Monday, and then you're going to spend all weekend trying to make something, and you're going to get it to them, and then the week after that you're going to watch what you gave them, and it's going to bring you to tears because it's so mortifying and awful. We had a string out at that time. We had like a 2-3 hour string out that we just slammed into something, and it was just abysmal, So no lying on the grant application. Don't tell them that you have things that you don't. Yeah, so that was kind of that. We didn't, other than that, we didn't really get very far with any of these grants. And then Patagonia, who has an environmental grant program. I was talking to my aunt about the project randomly. She said someone in her building had worked for the Patagonia grant program. So we contacted her. She said apply for a grant. We did. We didn't know that the guy who founded Patagonia had spent time in the Tongass, which is the forest. He had spent time in that forest. And that was part of his inspiration for creating Patagonia, was the time he spent in this forest. So that was kind of amazing. Patagonia, we applied, they called us back and said, you know, we don't fund films, but first of all, to get a call from them was unbelievable. They said, we don't fund films, but we do fund campaigns. So in the past, we funded campaigns in which the film is a centerpiece. And this was a huge thing for us as well, because this made us reorient the way we were thinking about this entire endeavor, to say this is not just making a documentary. We would like this documentary to do something afterwards, to make some kind of change or something. So we rewrote our application as a campaign. and applied with that. I was going to show you that application, but it's too long. If you want to see any of these things, you can email me and I'll send them to you. I'd rather have time for questions and stuff. So the bottom line is we ended up getting a grant from Patagonia for $10,000, which again, I know exactly where I was when we got that email that was like, you are getting this grant money. And it was amazing because it was like we could pay people that we hadn't been able to pay. It was unbelievable, and we applied to them, again, we applied to them every cycle after that. Because someone said to me, and this is great, I should have put these like quotes up in there, but anyway, but yeah.
So at this point, you didn't have any footage, you were just showing them your draft or your proposal?
No, at this point, we had a budget. Yeah, we had a budget for the film. We had, we did have some footage. Because the first footage that we shot, we made a trailer just with that footage, and we had like a 9-minute piece that we had put together.
That was all for your own money, the $2,000 basically.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that first shoot, which was $3 grand, and then we were also funding it with our own money throughout. The commercial part of our work, we would take some of that money every time and just put it right into Musicwood. I'm going to get into that in a minute. I'll show you sort of how that all breaks down. So we had done, I think, one trip to Alaska. So we had some great tree ceremony footage and some other footage of the forest that we thought was pretty amazing. We give it a 9-minute piece. Anyway, your best funders are people who have already funded you. So anyone who's already given you money is a top priority to reach out to get more money. And that worked with Patagonia. They ended up giving us 3 more grants of $10,000, which is kind of unbelievable. And then the Macintosh Foundation, which is a group who run a boat company out of up in Alaska, and we asked them directly for money, like, would you fund our film? And they said no. They had already funded a film for $300,000, which made us cry. And that film, the filmmakers basically ran off with the production. They ended up making a film that was sort of pro-logging, and then the film disappeared. It's all a little murky. These guys didn't want to talk about it. We couldn't find much about it. All we knew was that we were coming in and saying, hey, we're making a film about this forest. How about giving us some money? And they were like, this is the word. No, get away from us, you jerks. So, it was so depressing. So, but Maxine kind of made it her job to still stay connected with them, because beyond money, they were interesting people. They were really into the area. We were thinking, well, we could show the film on their boats as people are going through there. That'd be cool. So we really kept them involved in a big way. We would invite them to screenings, early screenings, where it was just like a half hour or longer, and encourage them to, give us feedback, what they thought about it. We'd let them know all of our moves. Here's what we're doing now, and here's what we're doing now. And through all of that sort of cajoling and wooing, I guess, by the time we got to the end and we were showing them a fine cut, they afterwards kind of pulled us aside and said, look, after showing the fine cut, we were saying, like, now we need these finishing funds, and boy, we're really close, we could really do this. And they pulled us aside and said, how much do you need to finish the film? And we said, we think we could do it for $30,000. And they were like, no problem. And so they gave us $30,000. But again, I mean, it was a payoff. We had invested a lot in it. But even if they hadn't given us money, there were so many intangible benefits to that relationship that it would have been fine, but the money was awesome. I think $75,000. That's 4 $10,000 grants from Patagonia, $30,000 from Macintosh, and there was $5,000 from a group called Wilberforce, or Jerome, I can't remember, one of them, who gave us money from a discretionary fund way after the film was like made, and they were like, we love this. We didn't fund you back then, but here's $5,000. So $75,000, which is great. I mean, amazing. Although in the context of the film, a film is very, very expensive. So the last way we raised money was with fundraisers, and I'll probably whip through this pretty quickly. We did a fundraiser in DC, Washington, DC. Maxine and I lived there for a long time. We hadn't been in New York for all that long. Most of the people we knew were in DC. We did a brick and mortar fundraiser. We rented a space. We showed our 9-minute cut. We showed a trailer. We showed a music video of a guy that we had filmed playing in the forest. And we had a guitar that Gibson had donated that we raffled off. We got a beer sponsor by Maxine calling Yingling, who are down the road from where Martin Guitars is, and saying, hey, we're making this film about Martin Guitars. What do you think? And they donated 20 cases of beer, which is kind of amazing. This is the task list to show how much needed to be done. That was color-coded by person up there, and then, you know, by, anyway, you get a sense of it. The bottom line is it was a ton of work, an absolute ton. We managed to raise, minus our costs and everything, we managed to raise about $9,000, $9,500, which was unbelievable. We were very happy about that, but it was super exhausting. That same summer, a friend of mine ran a Kickstarter, and that was the first time I'd ever heard of Kickstarter, and I was like, this is the way to go, because I don't have to carry beer, I don't have to like clean a place up afterwards, I don't have to run a projection. This is going to be so perfect. So a year later, we ran a Kickstarter. Again, I mean, Kickstarter crowdfunding is like its own 2-hour thing. Suffice to say, it's a lot of work, but we managed to raise $25,000.
Can I ask what your original goal was?
For what?
For Kickstarter.
It was 25K. Why do I have 29K? That doesn't seem right. We raised 9 at the fundraiser. It would seem like it would be more. 34. 34 is probably more right. We wanted to raise $25,000 from Kickstarter. We gave ourselves a month. We had a team. There was 4 of us working almost every day on the thing. It was crazy, and I don't know if that's changed now. This was 2011. But I see people who recently ran Kickstarters who are shaking their heads and saying, no, it's exactly the same. It's a ton of work, but you can raise a ton of money, and you don't have to carry lots of cases of beer. So that's what we raised from fundraisers. So our funding total, individuals, channels, fundraisers, and grants, was $105K. Yeah, let's look at the. I have. We can check the weather real quick. Just wanted to show you the our master finances. Oh my God, where? Really? This is how it's going to be. Here we go. Yeah, so this is our master finances that we put together. This is Hitman and Helpman, a giant spreadsheet. You can see the year over here, income on the left, expenses on the right. The things that are highlighted in yellow are Musicwood expenses. The things that are in white are just Hitman or regular Helpman costs. Like you can see over there, Helpman startup to lawyer, like that's not really a Musicwood cost. So we were tracking all of these. We were tracking everything basically, so that we could be able to tell what we were spending, where it was going, how much we needed, when grants or anybody else wanted to see budgets, we would have those numbers. Every shoot had a budget, and then that got funneled into here. And then, you know, over here, that's sort of a running total, income total, expense total. The difference is then Musicwood costs and Musicwood income. And this is, I think this is current actually, so you can see the cost ended up being $147,000 and the income being $115,000. So over there on the right, Hitman funds Musicwood to $31,000. And you know, you can see transcription, website, Dubs for Greenpeace. There's various shoots going on there. There's the DC fundraiser, $9,400. The cost is $1,300. There's an Alaska shoot after that that cost us 18 grand. Which was insane because it's so much money.
Did you have aerials and stuff?
What's that? Yes, there were helicopter shots. Which are so expensive. So yeah. Anyway, you know, just it keeps going. Even after we finished the film, there's Patagonia Grand on the left, 2013. Then you start on the right, you start to see film festival costs. Yeah, because it costs money to go see all this stuff. Look, there's a PR cost in August there for $5,000. All the way down to 2014, February. I mean, we had to do new Blu-rays. We had to do captioning. I mean, It doesn't stop. That's gonna be more. Okay, so that's pretty much just explaining what I said there. Right, that is fundraising. I feel like it was like an information bomb. And I told myself I was really gonna try and chill and like let it kind of flow, but so be it. So that was like a half hour. We've got, you know, I guess whatever, an hour and a half or so. So I kind of thought maybe we could do 15 minutes of Q&A on funding now. And then we're gonna like move on. The next thing we're mainly gonna focus on is post. I mean, obviously at the end, if you guys still have funding questions, you can ask them, but do you guys have any questions that I might have the answer to?
So looking at it, I think that's an awesome description, by the way, for sharing. You know, how would you have, if you're doing a documentary, if you're going to start a new documentary called like, you know, video plastic or whatever, you know, the next film will be.
Sure.
How would you go about it? Like, what would be the order? Would you start with Kickstarter? Would you ignore grants at all? Would you ignore channels? Like, what would be your approach?
That's a great question. Starting with a Kickstarter would be, I don't think I would do that because I would like to wait until I had something to show, to put on the Kickstarter, because I think making the promise to Kickstarter backers that this is going to get made, and it's going to look like this, and it's going to, I think the more of that you can have, I think the more likely you are to get funders. One huge thing is I think I would try and raise money to get a grant writer, or build in somehow to grant money that comes in for a grant writer, because there are people that do this professionally, and grants just take so much energy. It's like you're generating so much stuff, and then you've got to revise it, and then you've got to feed, you know, is it really pitching to exactly what they want, and who are these people? What other things have they funded? How can we make our thing? It's just, I think grants took a lot of energy. It paid off because we managed to make a lot from it, but I would hire a grant writer without a doubt. I don't know if I would go to channels unless I thought it was something super marketable that they would be interested in, and now even less. Like, that was 2010, 2011, and now I feel like channels with everything going to the sort of that HBO Go, I mean, I don't really know what the marketplace is like now, but for one-off acquisitions, I think I'd be tempted to ignore going to channels altogether.
And individuals?
I don't know. Individuals, I think I would still approach individuals. Again, where it was like appropriate to the subject matter. I mean, part of the reason we approached our friend Jack was because we knew he was into music, you know, and this was a music film. So I don't know, video plastic. If I knew people who were like very into recycling plastics that seemed to have a lot of money, I would perhaps talk to. I don't know. Individuals is one of those things where I feel like you should be conscious of it. It's something worth exploring. But it's a total lottery, but then it might pay off. I mean, again, you talk to other filmmakers, Graham, I know, has very specific stories about hitting these individuals who just were like, we're gonna sponsor this film, you know? So it's more the idea of staying open to individuals, exploring that.
Doesn't, oh, sorry.
No.
I was going to say, to follow that, doesn't your story kind of hold water to the phrase that, like, if you want money, ask for advice, if you want advice, ask for money? It seems like going after some of these individuals and grants got you to the thing that got you.
I've never heard that one. That's really good. I would put that in quotes. That's one of the. You guys should note that. What was that? If you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. Yeah. I like that.
How much were in the beginning your budget when you were submitting the grants?
Yes.
How much your budget was realistic to the end total? Like, how much your budget, and then.
Yeah, I wish I should have done a slide of the original budget that we had. I don't think it wasn't too far off, but we never included film festival costs and all those kinds of things. I think our budget, our estimated was about $150,000, because I remember talking to my aunt when she told us about Patagonia, and she was like, "Well, how much money are you looking for?" And she's like some, you know, God bless her, I love her, but she's like Upper East Side, you know, moving in different circles kind of thing. And we were like, "Well, we're trying to find $150,000." And she was like, "That's all?" And it was like, and she didn't follow that up with like, "Let me write you a check." It was more like, "I know someone at Patagonia." So I think that initial estimate was $150,000, and that's just about where we are. We were also encouraged by our accountants, I believe, to put deferred costs on all of our budgets. So part of this was because we were running a nonprofit, and we needed to make sure that everything was super solid if we ever got audited. And then beyond that, we were running a nonprofit that was hiring our production company to make a film that the production company would then give back. So we needed to make sure everything was really super dialed in. So they said one of the things to do is to put all the deferred costs on the budgets, so that when Hitman would send invoices to Helpman, it would have these deferred amounts in there as well. So you can then also say, okay, here's what we actually spent, but with the deferred costs per budget, here's what the film would have actually cost. And I think that's something like, it's over 300 grand. But that's a very helpful thing to have as well, because now again, as we're talking to other companies that are trying to put together a film, we have a very good sense, at least, of what Musicwood would have cost if we had been paying for everything. If that makes sense. Danny?
How did you find the difference?
You know, it was very lucky timing in a way, in that Hitman was doing a series of 1-minute vignettes for TNT called Dramatic Difference, where they wanted to highlight people making a difference in their community. And so we were doing 3 or 4 of these a year, where we were traveling around the US and filming these things, and we put a production fee into those shoots that just went right to Musicwood every time. And also, there were a number of occasions in which those shoots sent us places that we could film for Musicwood as well. We did one in San Diego, which is where Taylor Guitars is based. So we went, did the TNT shoot, and then spent 2 more days with Bob Taylor. So there were ways for TNT to cover some of those costs. You're not from TNT, right? Yeah?
Another question is, like, from...
I know that's not a helpful answer. That's just basically like, you know, we just sort of did it. You know, and it's like your own money, you know.
Yeah, so from the first time you built the budget, was there like a lot of changes into it? Like, did you budget it at first for like, I don't know, 100, and then you realized it's 150, or was it pretty close? Or?
No, definitely. It was changing all the time. There's 8, 9, 10 different budgets, without a doubt, because things would also happen that would impact the production and the budget, where we would go to Alaska, we would film, we'd be like, okay, we're done, we're great, we've got it, and we would show it to people, like people who'd spent time in that forest. We'd show them a cut as part of our screenings, and they would be like, you know, like, I'm just not getting like the sense of the forest. Like this is one of the crown jewels of the world, of America's forest. Like, it's one of the most spectacular, special, beautiful places on this earth. And like, I'm just not getting that from the film. To which we're like,
another helicopter.
Yeah, well, or actually it was what led us, well, the helicopter was really only for, mainly for the clear cuts, but it definitely did, we had another helicopter at that point, but it was like, oh wow, we're gonna have to go back. And not only are we gonna have to go back, we thought we could get away with just doing 1 shoot in Alaska. It's like, not only are we gonna have to go back, we're gonna have to figure out some way to get gorgeous footage of this forest, right? So or can we afford a helicopter? All those, so there were definitely many things along the way. Not to mention the story evolving. Gibson Guitars, I mean, I don't want to give away huge parts of the plot if you're going to see the film, but suffice to say, something enormous happens 3/4 of the way through that was completely unplanned for, that we thought, oh man, and now we have to go film that, and now we have to do interviews about that, and now we have to go follow with that. So the budget's constantly evolving. That's why you sort of see that master document that I showed. I mean, that essentially shows the evolving budget as it's happening. I mean, the estimates, we're just sort of doing our best as we're going on.
Your company, Hitman company, was a non-profit, or it was a LLC?
Hitman was actually, it started as an LLC, but then it became an S-Corp, where my wife and I are 2 employees of the company on its payroll, which is helpful for tax reasons that I don't fully understand. It's like an LLC is basically like you as an individual are the company. An S-Corp is a corporation, essentially, with employees. So, and it has shareholders and distributions. So we get a payroll, and then we also get shareholder distributions.
Is it cheaper than the LLC?
It's better for us because there's 2 of us, and by declaring a low salary for ourselves, we don't we pay income tax only on the salary and not on the shareholder distributions. Again, this is about the limit of my understanding. It works out better for us. I don't know. That's,
get a good accountant.
Get a good accountant. That's what our accountant told us. It's better for us. He explained it all to me. I just didn't get it. Yes, in the back.
You did a nonprofit, and I know a lot of people usually do fiscal sponsorship. So I'm wondering why you went the nonprofit, how it impacted, or if it impacted like people giving you funding.
That's a good question. I think there was something about having our own nonprofit that appealed to us in a real way. Jack had said, the individual we talked to, he had said, you want to set up a company so that you're not liable. That's, when you see a feature film and it says produced by the feature film's name, then you're like, wow, they're making a new company for every film. But yeah, so that it limits your liability. So I guess our sense was, well, if when comparing that with fiscal sponsorship, there was something so much more appealing about this idea of having another entity, another production company that's job is to make things that are worthwhile. And we have this secret dream, which is still ongoing and becoming a little bit more reality every day, that it was like, if we do this right, like right now, we are using Hitman to fund Helpman. But if we do this right, there's a possibility that Helpman could become its own thing to such an extent that we could even close Hitman down and just make a life and a living making documentaries that mean something. That's like the secret dream. So I don't know, there were personal reasons, I guess, as much as financial reasons.
I'm curious, since you cleverly funded your film with your commercial work, did you ever do kind of a cost-benefit analysis of like, where you added up all the time that you spent writing grants and all the time you spent doing fundraisers and Kickstarter and all this stuff, and figure out whether that it looks like on paper it looks like it did make sense.
I know exactly what you're saying.
On my film it did. My film, I was like, I could have just booked 4 more jobs.
Yeah, I'm not convinced it made sense for us either. I'm not convinced. There's a great book. It's like an ebook out, and it's about Jim Henson and funding creativity. It's really, really good. I wish I could give you more info than that, but she talks about that one very viable way of making creative projects is to do commercial projects to fund them. Yeah. And from going through this experience, that is like my new model. To be honest, moving forward, that's what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to build a commercial job that is as low stress and low insane work hours as possible, that makes money that can be funneled into the creative project. For me, I think that's the most viable way. And then you would have money to hire a grant writer potentially, or to do whatever. All of those funding things are a lot of time and energy. I would do a Kickstarter again, I think. That's setting aside a month and doing that. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a really viable way to fund something, without a doubt.
The book's called Make Art, Make Money.
That's it. Make art, make money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Funding. We can always come back to it too if you realize you have questions at the end. All right, we're gonna move on.
So there was no money in festivals at all for you?
No, that's not true. I didn't really include that because I'm thinking of that more as sort of the after your film is made. Mm-hmm. But yes, we've made some money with screening fees, especially recently, which has been unbelievable. Screening licenses as well. People will pay to download, like $250 for a license to be able to show your film. A couple of festivals paid, but not very many. Universities would show the film as part of their festivals. They would pay well. That's all sort of after the fact as well. Yes, we have been making some money on the back end, which is fantastic. Is that what you want to say, the back end? Anyway. Good? All aboard? All right, here we go. Number 2 is production. Like I said, I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but I did want to say, have insurance, track your budgets. That's it. That's all my advice. I left a bag of the cameraman's gear by the side of the road in Alaska, and that gear was $9,000 worth of gear, but we had insurance, so we were okay. We also offered rewards and anyway, I can't.
Is there footage in that bag?
Huh?
Is there footage in that bag or no?
No. He still had the camera. It was just a bag of super expensive lenses, like one beautiful old 60s lens that is. Anyway, they ended up finding the bag. But we had already had to buy him replacement stuff because anyway, I could go on.
Did you just take over the other stuff then? You just keep it? You're like, well, I guess we own this.
We do still have some of it. Some of you maybe there's like anyway. There's like a wireless lab that I learned out of film shop. That's a result of that. And so yeah, I have insurance and track your budgets, which I think I explained pretty well. So edit post. I'm gonna talk about this because I'm an editor. I edited the film. This is the part of the filmmaking process that I really love and also hate, like every other part of it. So we thought, since I had edited episodes of shows before, I was like, okay, let's just use the same edit schedule that they use on a show. And it's always crazy, but we're gonna make it happen. So we'll do a 14-week edit, just like we do on an episode of National Geographic Explorer. 10 weeks to edit, basically to rough cut. Then a week to evaluate, you know, watch it through. Then a week to do the changes based on your evaluation. Get you fine cut, evaluate again, and then finish. This is going to be so great. And yeah, that was absolutely ridiculous. It was preposterous. So much of this, looking back, that I've been doing over the past few weeks to prepare this has been like, wow, naivete. We ended up editing the film for about a year and a half. Off and on. That's not solid, but there were stretches where it would be absolutely solid. There were 2 or 3 stretches of 6 weeks at a time where it was nothing but Musicwood every day, which is a lot. So I've broken it down, that process, into 8 points. We're going to move pretty fast, but I don't know. Some of them, they're kind of self-explanatory. The radio cut, structure skeleton, the way we started our film was to get every interview transcribed. We had a ton of interviews. You get transcriptions of every interview. We used a service called Transcription Live, which I believe is based out of India. Later we used Mechanical Turk. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mechanical Turk, but there's an amazing post by a fellow named Waxy, that's his internet handle, called How to Do Cheap Transcription with Mechanical Turk. And you should read a little bit about the ethics of Mechanical Turk and all that, but if you're okay with moral gray areas, you can get it done very, very cheaply. That's look into that. But anyway, we got everything transcribed and then broke the transcripts down into topics, subjects, and then began to put what we call the radio cut together. And I think this is the string out. I opened up the old string out, which is like 4 hours long. 3:56. Yeah, it's over. There's a big gap. I don't know what that is. But this is all interviews strung out. String out number 2. Unbelievable. So,
but that's already selects, right?
It selects from the transcripts. It's literally like every single part of the transcript that we're like, this is great. And you can see how the guitar is made. Each red marker is a different subject. And we would put the subjects in as titles, and then you can easily jump between them. And also then we would come back to this throughout because it was like, oh gosh, I need another piece on someone saying something about how the guitar is made or about the magic of the forest or whatever, and then you had these built-in that you could look into. Before we get to Faceless Rough Cut, because the other thing I wanted to show is the other thing that we did was make story beats. So we had the transcripts that we grouped by subject and started to kind of rough out a structure there, and then we came up with story beats. Act 1, 2, 3. I can't remember why some things were bold and why some things aren't, but it meant something. I really tried to figure it out. I can't.
What point of the process did you make this?
This is very early. What do you like?
Something. This is the first point that we started.
What?
The second point. Act 1, bullet 1, subpoint 1.
Oh yeah. That's great. Well, because we didn't know how we were going to start it. I mean, starting the film is one of the hardest things, right? There's no way you're going to know that until you're way into the process. So I think something is pretty valid. You guys want to write that down. Start your own film that way. Because you know you're going to have to hook the audience in somehow, and that is one way to do it. Yeah, there's other good stuff like Wizard of Oz and Lorax. For a while, we thought we were going to include these like clips from popular movies, like here's how trees have been portrayed and it'll be fun for the audience. And we gave that a shot and that did not work at all. I don't know how, who like Michael Moore's early films, Aaron Morris, I don't know how they did it because it's amazing, like, anyway.
Because it doesn't work, because it's expensive.
No, fair use, you can get a lot from fair use of that, especially if you're making an argument or making a point using those clips. It all falls under fair use, even the Wizard of Oz and whatever. No, it was more from a narrative sense that our film was telling a specific story, and so I guess if you're talking about Flint, Michigan or whatever, like maybe you can have a little more verisimilitude, but with our film it's like you can following the story and then suddenly you're watching the tree things from Lord of the Rings and you're like, what? Why? You know? So yeah, this is very, very early. At what point do we do this? Right around the same time as gathering the interview sections, the interview bits into their sections. This is really early stuff, figuring out what the narrative is going to be. I mean, you can see there's points and subpoints. We need a beat, which is, I think, implying, you know, we're going to have to film something, or we don't have this in the interview as it is, or how are we going to deal with that? Need beat a little later. Anyway, and then there's some beats at the end that we cut and just stuck them at the end. Some assessment of what was accomplished. It's great. It's really fun for me anyway, seeing these things. So using the beats and the string outs and our transcriptions, we made what I refer to as a paceless rough cut because we did not understand pacing. We thought this was a rough cut and we were very excited to have a rough cut, but when we watched it, it was a giant mess, and I thought I would show you a clip from it. Okay. This is what used to be the open.
The way I describe it, I think it's as close as you might come to the sound of an orchestra from one instrument.
Making an instrument as expressive as a guitar that allows a musician to express himself and communicate that to the world is just great.
I'm Ollie from Turin Breaks. I'm Gail from Turin Breaks. Everyone just seemed to have an acoustic guitar. That was what it was all about, really, when you were teenagers.
No one doesn't like music. Everybody embraces it. And music is emotion. You see somebody playing an instrument that our people made. It's just a wonderful one feeling. Well, the wood is vital to the sound of the instrument. There's different tonal characteristics to different species of wood. That's why spruce is used for the majority of the tops of acoustic guitars.
Where are we? What?
Spruce is the favorite wood.
What happened?
It's what I've used for years and years and years, and it's light, it's strong, it's resonant.
The sides and the back, whether they're made from mahogany or some other wood, really color that sound. They can make for a rich bass, or they can make for kind of a high treble sound.
It's just like information. It's just information, information, information.
It all makes sense. You can feel the wood. It's all very connected to what your fingers are doing. It vibrates too. Yeah, you can just feel it vibrating. Yeah, that's quite a lot of it actually. Having it right behind you, feeling it vibrate, you know, it helps you sort of get into it.
All right, I'll stop it there. But you get the idea. It's like this is what happens when you make a film based on, you know, your story beats and whatever. It's like it's all this info, but we don't have any sense of scenes. We don't have any sense of characters. Like all these people are just showing up. And we don't have any sense of place. It's like, well, I thought I was with these guys playing guitar, but then I'm in a factory, and then like another guy's playing guitar. It was a mess. So, self-inflicted film school, and this is probably my favorite section. Neither Maxine nor I went to film school, although I took a bunch of film classes in college, even documentary classes. I don't remember what I learned. So it was definitely Maxine's idea first, but we were showing this rough cut and realizing that it was pasteless and a total mess. And I'm pointing out now what's wrong with it. It's very, very clear to me, but at the time, we had no clue. We just knew that it wasn't working. We would show it to people and they were like, okay. So we started reading a ton of books about documentary making. One key book that was so key I took a picture for you is, did I hear a cheer in that? Do you know this book?
I do.
Yeah, this book is it's really amazing. And they do case studies in this book where they take certain films and really break it down very, very detailed. Here's what they're doing in this film. Here's how they're doing it. Here's how they're getting, here's why this part is working. And it was so helpful to us. We would watch some of the films that she mentions in the book. There's this fantastic film called Daughter from Da Nang. It was like a PBS film that we watched. We were watching tons of documentaries as well and evaluating them all the time. And to this day, I know it's irritating for me, for other people, when I'm watching documentaries with them, because I'm just like, you call that an open? Like, that's not making a promise to the audience. You know what I mean? So this idea of breaking down other films to find out how they work became super central to us. So what we began to do was load digital versions of documentaries into Final Cut and break them down. So what you've got here is you've got these match edits at the top that are denoting where the scenes change. What you've got underneath is we made different color slugs essentially to represent, this is the music, this is the narration. This particular breakdown was to get a sense of how music and narration work within scenes. But I can't emphasize enough how helpful this is. It was a giant pain in the ass. It's a real pain to watch this film through and say, like, here's music, here's music. But there's something that happens when you look at it like this, and you're like, okay, like I'm getting a physical sense of how a film works. Look at that giant, oh, this is the Pat Tillman story, by the way, which is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. There's that giant scene in the middle, you know, like there's like some small scenes in the beginning, that makes sense. Another giant scene like right towards the end, and then small scenes. The way the music works, there's a big chunk where there's not much music there. There's a lot of music there, there's not much there, you know, like what's this scene, you know, where there's no music, like a tiny bit of narration. I can't emphasize how helpful this is and was. After we did a bunch of these exercises, we tore our film apart and broke it into acts and started working on each act individually and started doing techniques that she suggested in the book, like this idea of making a promise to the audience that your opening scene, it should be two people fighting and then we meet each person individually and they're not fighting, but we've made a promise to the audience, like don't worry, later they're going to be fighting. So now you'll sit through them just doing their normal humdrum thing because you know how are they going to be fighting? So this idea of making a promise or setting the train going, you know, we could do a whole class on that too. We broke it down into the classic no cards, which is in like every film class ever. They were color coded to mean something, I don't remember what at this point. That's way too many scenes. That's way too many, or even points of information. Ridiculous. I don't know if I'll show that. Make them want the next scene. That was a huge takeaway from all of these exercises. That was something that really, really shaped the way the film came together. The idea that at the end of a scene, the audience should have enough information and be at a place in the narrative that they want what you're going to give them next. So the scene ends and it's like, oh, now I have to know what happens to the other guy, or I have to know what, and then that is answered, and then we take it to the next place where you make them want the next thing. Huge. It resulted in an almost entirely new structure for the way we dealt with the film. Another thing that we took away is that, and maybe you know this, but the idea that you've got scenes, a group of scenes built into a sequence, you got sequences, a group of sequences built into the act. And so the idea of make them want the next scene also functions for this. When a sequence comes to an end, a grouping of scenes comes to an end, we should want whatever the next sequence is going to give us. And the same with the act. When that act comes to an end and you feel it, you always feel it, we should really be ready for whatever's coming in that next act. I'm making it sound like math or whatever, but to a large extent, that structure does have a lot of similar attributes, and also I just kind of like that. So it really, that stuff really spoke to me, and the creativity will come through as you make it, you know, as you adhere to these types of rules. These are, and again, I mean, I'm saying rules, but I don't know, everyone's film is different. These are things that made a big difference to us when we were making the film. Brain trusts / feedback. So then we had what we felt like was a much better rough cut. It was not pasteless. It made a lot more sense. We started to do, we went to panels. I believe Judith Helflin referred to it as a brain trust, and we just pulled that idea in because obviously as you're editing, you're trying to put yourself in the mind frame of someone who's never seen your film before, which you can't do because you've seen it 1,000 times. So you're gonna have to start screening it for people. What's great about the brain trust is it's a real opportunity not just to get feedback from other folks, foundation, to include people that are important to your film or that you want to be important to the film. People love being included in that kind of formative stuff. It feels like something special. And if you present it as something special too, and maybe it's a small group and you're like, wow, thank you all for coming, we're really looking forward to getting your feedback. It can serve both of those functions, which are both really, really critical. One thing we would do is surveys after the brain trust, because we found that a lot of times the film would end and people, it's hard to get a discussion going, as film shop people know as well. There will oftentimes be this silence, and especially people who aren't used to workshopping. So we found by giving them a simple survey to take 5 minutes to fill out, just you know, like a multiple choice kind of thing, and then room for them. You see, this was a 30-minute cut back in 2011. But this, now everyone takes 5 minutes, they write stuff down, and now we have talking points as well. And now we have qualitative data, which we can, you know, put in our grant applications and things like that. We know people are responding to this because we've shown it to this many people and they all said this. We know, also afterwards we can go back and say, did people like blah, blah, blah? Oh, we have this data. And you know, you get an intern and they type that all up for you. We thought we weren't gonna have a narrator. We wanted it to be verite, so we wanted to make sure we were on the right track with that, and nobody missed having a narrator. Fine cut. I mean, I feel like that's it for brain trust. Again, very important. There was a point where we actually paid money to fly out to Oregon because we wanted to show to Native communities as well to make sure we were telling the story conscientiously. And so, you know, that was we almost treated it like a shoot, you know, in the overall budget, and it was completely worth it because the feedback we got was phenomenal. And also, then we knew moving on, we were able to say, we've shown it to Native communities, and we're taking their feedback, and this was, you know, a big deal to us because so much of this was a Native story that we were like, you know, these two white folks who wanted to make sure that that part was coming through well. So that was very, very important. So from all the feedback, we eventually got to fine cut. I mean, what am I going to say about the fine cut? Oh, wow. Yeah. This is, look how big it is. It's just like, it's just coming to get you. So at this point, we did this really intense thing. And again, did we read it somewhere? I don't know. But watch it all again. I think it may have been from that book that I had the picture of that said, you get to this point, you think everything is fine cut, you think it's done, you think you're ready to move on. Watch all of your interviews again. Watch all of your B-roll again. Yes, that's right. Absolutely right. You're not even doing it, and you're like, I don't want to do that. I mean, we were lucky because there were two of us, so we could split it up. But this was so valuable, and also maybe if there hadn't been another person saying like, are you done yet? We wouldn't have done it. But this was so valuable because it's not even reading the transcripts again, it's watching the interviews again, because there are some points that it doesn't come through in the transcript where the subject is emotional or there's something real happening. And we didn't find many moments that we had overlooked, but we found 1 or 2 or 3. You know, I don't know, but they were big. You know, the things that were found. And the same with the B-roll. We wanted to be sure: are we using every single best shot? It was epic and it was intense, but it was very, very worthwhile. And again, then moving forwards, now you have no fear that there's some shot sitting in there that you didn't see that would have been more perfect for the film or interview bite. Now you know we're using every single best piece. Watch it all again.
How much, what was your raw footage count for hours?
Oh, I don't know. It's a lot. Greenpeace, I mean, it's over 100 hours. I mean, it's 150 hours. I don't know. Greenpeace also gave us a ton of their footage. You saw some of the mini DV protester footage in the trailer. So we had like hours of that stuff. We had native footage as well. I mean, it's a ton.
So you watched all the raw footage?
No, our footage. Sorry, it wasn't. That's a good point. Not the we didn't really do the archival. It was ours. It was just the interview and
like I mean, like was the stuff that you were watching was literally you were just going like things you cut up already and organized and you went through and watched again, or did you actually watch like?
Yes,
like the camera's rolling. Like, all right.
No, we were watching raw footage, but zipping through until you hit the part where your markers are and look like, okay, I called that out. I called that out. But I mean, you know, triple L, fast forward, so you are seeing stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Okay. Watch it all again. Get some advisors. I know I was getting bored with doing the things. Yeah, get some advisors. That was another thing that completely transformed our film. At one point, I was in a coffee shop. Teresa from Film Shop was there with Doug Block, who she'd been working with, and she introduced us, and we ended up hiring him as an advisor on the film, and that was just unbelievable. It just really took it to the next level. He gave great feedback. There's something also about paying someone. I think it was $500 for 1 round of feedback, which is a lot, but again, an experienced filmmaker who has a deep understanding of things, who's coming to the film from an outside perspective, hasn't been watching it a million times. It's just incredibly valuable. He liked the film so much he ended up coming on as a consulting producer, which was also a huge momentum boost for us. We also got some good feedback from Marshall Curry, who made the film If a Tree Falls. We met him after a panel. He gave us his script for that film so that we could study his structure in that way. He gave us some great feedback. It was very, very helpful. And we also used Peter Broderick, who had come to Film Shop as well to give a talk. He was kind of a distribution guru, and we had hired him on to help us with the distribution because we didn't know anything about it.
Did you only have advisors kind of at that stage, sort of fine cut stage?
Yes, I'm differentiating the advisors from the brain trust. I think before that we were doing brain trusts, and then it was fine cut where we specifically were seeking out these advisors. Because at that point it's like, okay, we've gone through all that, we know we have all of our best stuff in there, and so now we're getting into some more subtle things, and that's where it felt like now maybe we should spend money to get someone who can help us with that type of subtle stuff, taking it to the next level.
And how much, did you end up restructuring things? Was it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna, where do we get into? Oh, Marathon, not Sprint. Yeah, we do end up, look, post elements, we can skip it. It's, you're gonna have to add music, graphics, and sound. We're not gonna watch it.
What about the rights of the music?
Well, so I'll get back to that more advisor stuff. Yeah, the bottom line is we ended up changing things very drastically at a certain point a little bit later, which I'm going to get to. That's kind of Marathon, not a sprint. It's this idea of like right when you think you're done, actually you're going to have more to do. We ended up changing things quite drastically based on advisors' feedback.
After finding.
After finding.
Wow.
Oh yeah, when we thought the film was done. It's the worst, but it made the film what it is. Yes, so sound, music, graphics. We licensed one. We thought for a while maybe we would do library tracks. So we were in discussions with how much that would cost with library companies, and they were cutting us a nonprofit rate, so we could have done it. We ended up keeping one library track in the piece, but Jack, our mentor throughout this entire process, basically got together with the people at his company and said, we want to write a whole score for you guys and give it to you free, which was unbelievable. And they mainly did music for TV, so this was a chance for them to kind of stretch as well. So it was really a match made in heaven, and they were going gangbusters on this. They were doing things like when Bob Taylor shows up, they rented a Taylor guitar to use a Taylor for his music. Gibson has a Gibson, Martin has a Martin, right? Which it seems like too much, but actually those things are perfect. And for music nerds, they totally get it. And music nerds are one of our major audiences. And you know, or even if you're not, all those things are affecting you on some subconscious, subtle level, that kind of care. So they really brought a lot of attention to what they were doing, which was great. They also provided the graphics and the sound mix, and they provided all that free. I think I just was going to show the open because the graphic open they made was unbelievable.
An $18,000 shot right there.
Yeah. This is mixing our footage with 3D graphics that they put in, mist, and then there's like guitar and native motifs that are coming in too. That's my guitar in Alaska. And they did all that music too. That was one of those things where when it came in, we were like, oh my God, it feels like a real film. And which was perfect, and it's early on, and it also conveys to an audience this is a real film. And it's one of those things, anytime I see it in a theater or anywhere, there's a little intro bit, and then when it hits that, I'm like, man, it just like feels real, you know, which was very important to us. Marathon, not a sprint. So we pretty much thought we were done. We were doing our final day of sound mix, where we were locking everything down. We had gotten into Doc NYC, where we were going to premiere. This was beginning of September. Doc NYC was November. So we thought, let's bring in Peter Broderick, our distribution specialist, so we can start talking about distribution. He watched the film. We were literally in the last day of sound mix, and then it was like, we're going to go step out into the conference room, have a Skype with him for an hour, which we did. And he said, before I get to distribution, do you want to know what I thought of the film? And we said, yes, of course we do. And I say he ripped it apart. I don't know, actually. I wish I had a recording of that if it could, to see. That's how it felt, because we thought we were done. And we've been working on it for 5 years. And his feedback basically boiled down to, you've got a good film, but there's a great film in there, right? Which is like, I mean, it's a great thing if you want to motivate artists to work. That's what you should say to them, because you can't ignore it. And so I remember going back into the sound mix and just literally feeling like I was going to throw up, and the sound mixer was like, what, are you guys okay? So his point was, this is a marathon, not a sprint. His point was, you feel like you're done and you just want to be finished and you feel like you're hitting the finish line. This is like the most important point to remember. It's like a marathon, like stay calm, like don't just do what needs to be done, just keep it going. So that I felt like this was an important point that we learned, and something I'm hoping I'll remember in further films. We ended up then hiring another consultant, Marshall Curry's editor, a guy by the name of Matt Hamachek, who's phenomenal, who came in and helped us take the film to a whole new level. And he was giving us feedback that, like, this like meta editing stuff that I had never thought of before. Things like, in our open, as we had the 3 guitar guys. You met them all, but they were all, it was like 1, 2, 3, and it sort of interspersed. But in the narrative of the film, they didn't actually all meet until they were in Alaska. And he was saying, you should make the editing reflect the narrative, and don't have the characters meet from an editing standpoint until you get to the point where they meet in real life. Keep them completely separate and discrete in the beginning. And then they only meet from an editorial. You can intermix them and use them as one voice. Stuff like this that I just never would have thought of. Or the idea of, he said for every film that he does, they come up with rules, and the rules change on what the film is. But like on If a Tree Falls, they had a rule that said, whenever you meet a character, you need to see them in their environment doing something before you hear from them. So you can get to know them viscerally before you hear what they have to say. So this idea as well of like coming up with these types of rules. I mean, this was all total next level stuff to us that we then incorporated into the film in the 2 months up to the premiere at Doc NYC. And it was absolutely insane, and Hurricane Sandy finishing, and then we premiered like the week after. But I mean, that's pretty much the post, right? I mean, never finished. I mean, I think you get it. Even this week I was editing on, we just sold an international version to AMC Asia into a Russian TV company. These are our first international sales. And of course, we had promised them that we have a 60-minute cut, and we had shown them a rough. And so I've been spending the past week editing, getting it to a place where we can actually deliver. So here it is, literally this week, never finished. Oh, that's the last one, yeah. So, I mean, I was going to show you the two opens, you know, how it was before and how it was after, but if you're interested, maybe I'll post them somewhere or something, because I'd rather do Q&A with the time we have left, actually. I mean, it's suffice to say it's very, very different, and I think it's interesting.
So how many of those steps do you think you should have done before you went shooting?
I guess I don't understand. What do you mean? Oh, like story beats and all those kinds of things?
Yeah, like even like, you know, organizing the scenes. Like, do you think that like some of the things that you shot didn't make it to the film? Obviously, right? You have something. Yeah, but like, you know, those things of like organizing the scenes and trying to build it. Like, I feel like if you can do it before, obviously things change as you go. And you know, you said something about Gibson and
yeah,
you know, your revelations and stuff like that. But do you think that if you could done a few of those steps before you went shooting, you could have saved time, money, efforts, energy?
I mean, I would also say that it's giving you a bit of a false impression, as in the way I sort of made it seem here is like we did all the, you know, we did the fundraising, then we did the production, and then we did post, whereas really it's all happening at the same time, right? So, I mean, we were coming up with the story beats and starting to do the string out, and we still had shoots to do. Yes, I mean, I guess I don't know how to answer that. Could we have done more beforehand? Maybe, but I constantly felt like we were doing, I mean, just enough, doing everything we had to keep the thing moving forwards. And yeah, I don't know. I think what I will say is knowing now this idea of conceptualizing the film as a group of scenes, a group of sequences, as an act, that maybe that would change the way we do production, because we at that point were thinking much more in terms of information, much more in terms of here's what we have to explain to people about the forest, here's what we have to explain about the guitar, here's what we have to explain about the natives. And we never thought we should figure out a way to explain those things in a scene of something. We were doing it in interviews, or, you know, so I would try and do more of that, maybe, like, yes, conceptualize what the scenes could potentially be, especially before going into a shoot. Does that make sense? I don't know, do as much of it beforehand as you possibly can, I guess. It's just so mutable by its very nature, like a documentary too. It's just, yes?
I just wanted to ask you a question. Earlier you said you named 2 transcription companies.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could repeat them. And you said one of them, Mechanical Turk, you can get cheaply, your transcript's been cheaply, but there's moral gray area?
Yes. Well, Transcription Live was the one.
Transcription Live.
Yeah, and you upload it, and they do it, and they're really fast.
Okay.
It's pretty good. And Mechanical Turk is a service that Amazon offers that basically has people sign up to do tasks, often repetitive tasks or whatever. So I could sign up to Mechanical Turk, and I sit there, and then a request comes in for me to do something, and it says, okay, for 15 cents, go to this website and make a comment or something, and you do.
And then they'll do your transcript for you?
Yeah, so what you do is you break your transcript down into discrete 1-minute pieces, and you say, okay, for whatever it is, 50 cents, like transcribe this 1-minute piece. And so people will do it. And I was like, this is awesome, this is so wonderful, and so I did it, and then I started reading things about Mechanical Turk where people are saying, well, part of the problem with this is it's actually a way to skirt around minimum wage type things, so you're really getting very exploitative as far as the way the labor is working. People, even though they're volunteering, and a lot of people are doing it at their job potentially, where maybe they push paper and they're like, oh, I can do some of these stupid tasks and make a little money at the same time. Who knows? So it's kind of, there's like labor issues involved.
We didn't give like Mechanical Turk like hours of transcription.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so you saved a lot of money by doing that?
a ton. But that's what, and luckily we didn't read about the gray area until afterwards, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wish I could keep you in the dark, but I can't unread what I've read.
But the other was called Transcription Live.
Yes.
And Mechanical Turk, T-U-R-K?
Yep.
Thanks.
And if you're going to do Mechanical Turk, which, if you look up Waxy, the guy's internet handle is Waxy, he has a very detailed description of how to do it. Like, here, break it into 1 minute things, then post it here, then use this, like, he's got a whole, there's like a process so that you can, and it's a little complicated, like it's not like coding really, but it's a little complicated, but.
How do you spell Waxy?
W-A-X-Y. Yes.
If you were starting this project again, with this knowledge and experience now, would you have hired the editor in the beginning?
Maybe. I don't know. I've thought about that moving forward. It's like, wow, maybe I would hire an editor, like someone with like a ton of doc experience, or I don't know, that I could then work with, or I'm not sure. Possibly. That's something we're thinking about for the future. Possibly. But I mean, I would never have done it on this because it was our first one, and we didn't know how much we had to learn, like every first time.
It took such a long time. I think for time-wise, if you have some budget, it is better to go with the editor instead of.
Yeah, that's true. But the average time for a documentary is 5 years.
Wow, really?
Yep. That's the average. Some are lower, some are higher. There was also a crazy stat that we came across that was really weird. That was like 77% of first-time filmmakers never make a second film. Something like that. And it was like, screw you, we're going to show you a make, and then you finish and you're like, again. Or you think you're finished. And you say,
you show up at a restaurant instead, or what is the...
Yeah.
You pay off your credit card debt.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right, yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure you would have appreciated the advice before the last bit of your sandwich, but do you see a benefit to have, would you want to have had, how do I say it? Would you want to have had an advisor earlier in the process to help you structure, you know what I mean, something?
Maybe, I don't know. I guess.
Because all that came after, like, when you're near the end.
Yeah. I think it would have been harder for the advisors. I mean, I feel like that was more of what the Brain Trust. The Brain Trust was sort of an advisor at that stage, at those, the 30-minute cut, at whatever. Because it's more like what is the audience feeling? And then people like Doug Block or these other very accomplished filmmakers, I feel that their advice is most helpful later on when, okay, we've sort of satisfied the audience. Now, how can we be more effective as artists, or how can we more emulate the great
things that the audience couldn't articulate?
Yeah, exactly.
They know this.
Exactly right. An audience can easily articulate, like, I'm bored here, right? But like once we solve those types of issues, then yeah, they can't articulate, you should have them like not meet until they, So I feel like that trajectory was pretty rad.
That exercise you did of breaking down documentaries, I think I never thought about that. It's an incredible exercise. Are there others that really stood out to you from that book, or maybe now that you would give to someone now?
Breaking down films?
Or just in general to understand structure better?
Well, the Tillman story was amazing because its structure is so weird, and it's kind of great to see how, like, they refer to their structure as a four-leaf clover the Pat Tillman story, made by Amir Barlev. They refer to their structure as a four-leaf clover with his funeral in the middle, and it's like they would tell this part of the story and then come back to the funeral, and then this part of the story and then back to the funeral. And so to see that, I was like, what? That could be a structure? That's kind of unbelievable. So that was when we broke down. We broke down one from the book called Daughter from Da Nang, which I just highly recommend. I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix, and it's just really good about
how's it called again?
Daughter from Da Nang, D-A-N-A-N-G, I think. It's her parents were refugees from Vietnam. She grew up in the U.S. and the film's about her going back to see her family. Oh yeah, no, her family was there. They gave her as a baby to the troops as they were leaving Vietnam, and so it's about her going back and meeting her family who were absolutely spectacular. And then we also did If a Tree Falls, which is a film I love anyway. Marshall Curry's really, really good. But it was also appropriate to what we were doing, so we thought there'd be something we could get from that. And then Crude, I mean, we were just watching tons and tons. Crude was super helpful in teaching us what an introduction can do, because the very first piece in Crude is like this woman in the Amazon singing this song about like the warriors or, you know, the land, and it just, there's something about it, it's so immediately compelling. We're like, oh, the beginning should like bleed in like that. So we were like picking up different things from different films.
I know that when you're talking about the brain trust, because like Film Shop, I feel like might have like been one of those.
Oh, totally.
So watching the versions, I remember at one point, like you brought it in for like the second time and showed it, and you talked about like everyone had this like feedback in the beginning, and I don't remember what it was. Like show the guitars more, or show the forest more, or something like that. And you just like started laughing. You're like, that's so funny because like we had done that, but we screened it somewhere else, and they said lose that. Yeah. And so like, how do you balance getting such conflicting, passionate feedback?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that you're going to do yourself in some very real way. I mean, are you hearing the same feedback in one place and different in, you know, like how much are you hearing that? How does that fit in with what you yourself think about that? I mean, I don't, you know, there's no clear answer on that. I mean, there were certainly points at which everybody but us felt a certain way, like when you saw those guys turn breaks that were playing. When we would show it to Brain Trust and the Film Shop as well, like everybody hated that song, and those guys, they were just like, you gotta get rid of that. And we were like, but we love that song, we love it. And everyone was like, no, get rid of it. And like everybody. So we finally ended up getting rid of that part. Their interview is still in there, but the performance isn't. But yeah, then when we were getting things that were diametrically opposed, I mean, it would be more about where do we think people have a point, where do we feel like it fits in with what we're trying to do. No easy answer, I guess, for that one. There were also there would be points which people would say something, and then afterwards, Maxine and I would be talking about feedback, and we're like, we're not doing that. Like, no, we're not doing that. So it's, you know, when you feel solid about things too, like you get a sense of it. It's more the bigger experience is when you keep hearing this thing that you don't want to do. That's the bigger thing for the brain trust. When you ignore it 4 times, and then it shows up the 5th time, and you're like, I should have mentioned Film Shop. I mean, incredibly, the idea of workshopping, I mean, that was like a brain trust / workshop, which was unbelievably helpful. Unbelievably helpful. I think I showed 3 cuts of it to Film Shop. So, anybody else?
Alright, I'm sorry, did you say before you're going to show us the new beginning, the final beginning?
Oh, yeah.
I would love to see
okay.
that, but I don't know if there's more questions.
I mean, I don't, when's the next thing supposed to start? It's 1:30.
It's lunch next, isn't it?
I think we said they wanted to see it.
Do you want to see it? It's only 3 minutes.
Yeah.
The open of the film the way it is now.
Yeah.
Replaced. You know, we're in a place.
Here we are with Bruins guitars. This is a D45, and what's amazing to me, we built 91 of these prior to World War II. My grandfather would have been involved in manufacturing this, and not only do we have 1, but 2. I've never been in the same room. 2 vintage Martin D45s at the same time. Adirondack spruce top, Brazilian rosewood back and sides, the top of our line. This one's nice. If you happen to have $165,000.
Right. That line always gets a laugh. It's like it's such a lovely, like this man loves guitars. Guitars are expensive, he talks about the wood. It's doing all of this stuff that earlier version you saw, people were like telling you, just like, oh, it's made from these woods and it's made from this, but it's like, this is doing it in just such a better way.
Guitar builders chose the woods they chose before my family got into the business of making guitars. Someone or a group of guitar builders back in, I'm not sure, the 1700s, perhaps, decided that rosewood ebony and spruce made the finest sounding, most durable, most beautiful looking guitars. Those woods were then extremely exotic. Imagine in the 1700s trying to get ebony from Africa and rosewood from Brazil. But no one has since found any better woods. They nailed it.
Replaced again. Flip-flops. It's a character moment, right? Oh, it's the guy who wears flip-flops.
I've been making guitars for 35 years, and 10 years into it, I realized that I was going to see the disappearances of some species of wood happen in my lifetime. The fretboards are made from ebony. This is a wood from Africa. A lot of real interesting forestry has to take place in order to get the wood for this. I started the company as a 19-year-old kid, making guitars for local people. That's all I've ever done. I'm unemployable. I make guitars. I don't just make guitars, I make guitars here. I don't even think I could be employable at another guitar factory.
So anyway, then he's gonna. Do you want to still play? He's gonna tell
The most widely known wood in guitars would be rosewood. This wood's grown in India. But when I was a young man building guitars, I could buy Brazilian rosewood. We would buy all the rosewood we want. It was essentially free. And of course now, the trees have been cut down, so it can't be exported, it's contraband. It's very, very rare. This is Sitka spruce. Well, these are the Sitka spruce tops. They're very light, they're stiff and strong, and they make a fantastic soundboard for guitars. If I were to look down at this top and start counting the grain lines, we're up to 50, there's 100. There's 100 years of the tree growth right there.
Wow.
Okay? Yeah. Chances are that the Sitka spruce tree that this guitar came from grew for 500 or 600 years before it was ever cut. Wow. That really makes a person step back and think, well,
I should clarify also that this isn't the very open. There's some Native American stuff, and then Khaki King does a whole performance, and then it kind of goes into this. I just wanted to show you to compare with the way it started before. But as you can feel, it feels